The first seeds of the gospel came sailing to our shores on the decks of 19 warships in 1511. Together with his flotilla of ships carrying 800 Portuguese soldiers and 600 Indian troops, the conqueror of Malacca, Alfonso de Albuquerque, was accompanied by 8 military chaplains. Over the centuries and through recent periods, the local church in Malaysia was built with the help of foreign missionaries, one of the earliest being St. Francis Xavier, the great saint of the missions to the East. Through its infancy, the fledgling Catholic Church of Malaysia continued to endure in its faith through the periods of Dutch conquest, British colonization, the Japanese occupation, the emergency of the late 40s, and independence in 1957. Eventually, the dioceses of Penang and Kuala Lumpur were established 2 years before independence and 7 years before the Second Vatican Council. The new dioceses, with just a handful of priests, sailed through its early beginning with the help of catechists, who at that time had a fluid role, shifting gardener to cook, then to handyman, and back to being catechist, depending on the needs of the situation and availability of the priest in charge.
The Second World War left an indelible mark in the local church. When the bombing started in Singapore, at the same time as the invasion began in the north, there were large numbers who patronized the confession. The then Bishop de Waal also counseled that midweek devotions in the churches be brief and to the point, certainly for obvious reasons. The years ahead were years of uncertainty, fear for others, as well as encouragement and disappointment for some.
However, the church needed a new verve in a new spirit to bring hope to the people of God and to the world. The mettle of the church was being constantly put to the test by all quarters. On the macro dimension, in the early 60s, the Second Vatican Council, convoked by Pope John XXIII, cast the church into a living dialogue with the modern world and set the pace to make the gospel relevant to the men and women of our times. So vast and varied was the scope of the council that every area of modern life was explored in the light of faith, war and peace, social justice, international relations, sacraments and liturgy, spirituality and morality, advances in technology, ecumenism, interfaith relations, and even the role of the United Nations. Though the Council kept intact the continuities of the sacramental traditions of the Church, the effects of the Council's new envisions for a gospel spirituality was nothing short of being revolutionary.
At the end of the decade of the 60s, some of the unresolved tensions of Malaysian society erupted. The new economic policy and the political developments which followed raised questions about the role of the church in society. Hence, for the church in Malaysia, changes flowing from Vatican II came in good time to lend direction and counsel. Some changes were immediate, such as the replacement of the traditional Mass from Latin to the vernacular. However, the full impact of the influence of the Council was to grow stronger with the passing of time. The Church in Malaysia, like everywhere in the world, started the implementation of the ideals recommended by the Historic Council. It is a long process which is still in the stages of being fully implemented. The Second Peninsular Malaysia Pastoral Convention in Majodi Centre in Plenthong in August 1996 is the culmination of several assemblies that had taken place over the last few years. The first such convention was held in Port Dickson in 1986. Significant of the recent assemblies was the gathering of bishops and priests in Peninsular Malaysia for a formation program in February 1996. This was followed by a 2-day program for all religious, both women and men, for a dialogue and formation. And finally, an assembly of bishops, priests, religious and laity at diocesan level, which also set aside a day for the youth to express their views. For the first time, these assemblies were conducted simultaneously in the 3 dioceses in May and June 1996. All this to facilitate the integration of new visions in the ongoing pastoral thrust of the Church towards the ideals of a new way of being Church.
Among the first visible changes that took place in the post-conciliar period were in the liturgical celebrations. Priests made an about turn and faced the people during the celebration of the Mass. The interior of churches were also remodeled, and the first thing that came down was the communion rail, which separated the laity from the sanctuary. There were also steady moves to appoint more local clergy and bishops, although the numbers of expatriates were still high. Some other restyling which came to be loudly visible was in the changing habits of the religious orders. The Sisters of the Holy Infant Jesus were gradually weaning off from their very formidable, if impressive, all black with a train to a simplified all-white habit shortened at the knees. The lay women too, who came to church wearing veils, discarded their headgear in exchange for multicolored hairbands. Certainly these were not on the agenda of the Second Vatican Council, but rather came about as a silent and pragmatic revolution in accordance to the signs of the times.
Inevitably, all these changes brought mixed feelings among the people as they tried to make sense of what was happening within the Church. Steadily, over the wheels of time, things were becoming clearer. To strengthen this further, the bishops of West Malaysia and Singapore organized the Better World Retreats. Through these retreats in 1966, more than 600 priests, religious and lay people were brought together for the first time in the history of the local church for a systematic dialogue towards community renewal.
In tune with this, the Peninsular Church initiated liturgical and catechetical commissions and pastoral formation on various aspects of church life. As decreed in the conciliar document, for the fruitful employment of the means of social communications, a Peninsular Social Communications Commission was established. An audiovisual center commenced to provide for the various needs of the local church. Observations made during the various formation sessions at the diocesan and national levels, the clergy and laity agreed that there was a need for pastoral coordination and integration. The first 10 years following the Second Vatican Council, the socially oriented laity became involved in various organizations like the Young Christian Workers Movement, the Young Christian Students Movement, the Joyful Vanguards, as well as the Christian Family and Social Movement. In the early decade of the 70s, the winds of charismatic spirituality swept through the Peninsular Church. Prayer groups sprouted everywhere, and personal lives became living testimonies of conversion and growth through the Life in the Spirit seminars. The charismatic movement, which brought a fresh spiritual renewal, eventually found a place in the mainstream of the Church. Exploring new ways of engendering the ideals of the Second Vatican Council to become more effective, real, and inspiring to the people, the Peninsular Church formed the group called 5 Loaves and 2 Fishes. Another realization was the need to shift from seeking personal salvation to salvation as a community. Hence, the urgent need for renewal for every member of the church, including priests and religious.
The path was then set for the historic Aggiornamento in 1976. It is not known how many clergy and religious, never mind the faithful, can actually pronounce, let alone spell Aggiornamento. But the priestless August of 1976 did leave its mark on the local church. The Aggiornamento was far from being a radical step in itself, but it was the very vehicle needed to translate the mature implications of the Second Vatican Council with a new pastoral thrust into the life of the people of God. The process of renewal, with its emphasis on the classic, basic ecclesial communities, which came out as the major fruit of consensus during that August of 76, is still working its way through this period in time. These communities are to grow and become the evangelizing platform for mission in the local church.
A handful of wheat leavens 100 weight of flour. It was with such hopes that the Diocese of Penang saw the fruits of change after the Aggiornamento. Keeping in mind the main resolution to form basic ecclesial communities, the diocese, just as any other mission field, started out slowly and steadily as new avenues for thought and action came to light. From 1978 till 1983, Brother Elabel made his presence felt in the diocese. He brought with him a program called The New Image of Parish, an idea conceived by the popular movement for a better world. This program was unanimously, if not enthusiastically, adopted as the diocesan option for the creation of the ideal community spirituality rooted in the universal call to holiness. A task group was formed to facilitate the adaptation of the program to meet the specific needs of the diocese. And that is how NIP became RPP, or Renewed Parish Project. The parish of St. Michael in Ulster was chosen for the pilot project. The project proved to be a success, and many other parishes adopted the program. Efforts are still underway to enhance the concept of the RPP through formation programs in the parishes of the diocese.
Three years before the Aggiornamento, the Diocese of Malacca Johor welcomed Bishop James Chan as their new shepherd. Only a few years into his episcopate, Bishop Chan's mettle as a man with vision and foresight came to light in the concrete reality of the Majowi Center. The center was built with the aim of serving as the major formation house for the diocese, where retreats and diocesan as well as national assemblies, youth formation programs and training for the lay faithful has been successfully convened. The diocese has also encouraged the growth of various lay apostolates, family life ministries and professional Catholic groups such as the Medical and Catholic Nurses Guild in the light of Aggiornamento of 76. A diocesan magazine called News and Views and its Chinese version, Kiao Liang, became the official platform to communicate news in and around the diocese and to engender a sense of bonding between the clergy and the laity. To deepen the religious knowledge of the laity, the diocese initiated correspondence courses in English and Chinese, and it has proven to be effective and enlightening. Whereas 2 bookshops in the diocese cater to render the ministry of the word to the Catholic faithful.
The Kuala Lumpur Archdiocese established its first diocesan pastoral assembly immediately after the Vatican Council and has seen tremendous growth right up to the time of the Aggiornamento and the years after. In 1979, the priests of the Archdiocese made a commitment to form lay ministries and lay ministers. As part of the process to renew the church, the PRE or Parish Renewal Experience was introduced. The pastoral care of youths was noted as another major concern of the church in the 1986 Peninsular Malaysia Pastoral Convention. Hence, the Archdiocesan Single Adults and Youth Office was set up in 1989. The aim of ASAYO is to serve the needs of youth and single adults, leaders, priests, and others involved in the relevant parish ministries. History was made in the Diocese of Kuala Lumpur when the first Eucharistic Congress was held in July 1991 to mark the end of the Eucharistic year. Another significant development in the Archdiocese was the coming together of all lay associations. It was officially launched in 1991 to enhance greater participation and promotion of lay vocation in the Archdiocese. To assist in the pastoral responsibilities of the local ordinary, the Holy See appointed Father Murphy Parkiam, the auxiliary bishop of the Metropolitan Archdiocese of Kuala Lumpur.
The cohesion of the Church through the shared experiences at the Aggiornamento continues to be remarkable to this day. One profound area which is visibly seen is the stewardship of the Catholic Church in the ecumenical movements. The Catholic bishops have brought an important degree of balance alongside those traditionally involved with the Council of Churches, the Christian Federation of Malaysia, and the independent evangelical groups. The most striking feature of this ecumenicity is the willingness of Catholics at all levels to be more receptive and involved with the other denominations and peoples of other faiths, with the sincere objective of building God's kingdom on earth in the spirit of oneness. Growing triumphantly and with new verve, the Aggiornamento steadily offered the golden crop to the fields, the age of the laity. The laity were beginning to be formed in every way with the objective of inculcating a pastoral attitude towards the creation of the renewed church. Gone are the days when the lay faithful were simply told to pray, pay, and obey, as the late Father E. Lima once remarked. The celebration of the Mass, too, has ceased to be the domain of the priest, the organist, and the choir master as in the days of old. A startling metamorphosis has indeed taken shape. Committed parishioners have now assumed the roles of lectors and moderators during Mass. Appointed liturgical teams now select the readings and hymns and prepare the prayers of the faithful for the Mass. Trained communion ministers are another new breed of lay collaborators. They assist the priest in dispensing the sacred host in the church, as well as for the sick and aged convalescing in hospitals and homes. Hence, the Aggiornamento's call for unity among bishops, priests, and the laity was beginning to take shape in one way or another.
The vision of the Aggiornamento has meaningfully broadened the concerns of the Church from being preoccupied with its own life to a greater shift and emphasis on the quality of life in society. Hence, the concern for the poor. The Archdiocesan Office for Human Development was established in 1992, catering for the social and pastoral upliftment of migrant workers, drug dependents, people with AIDS, prisoners, and displaced children. This was in support of the greater realization that helping the poor must go beyond the mere act of dropping coins in a beggar's battered bowl. The poor need to be served and developed in a more holistic way, and that includes the spiritual poverty of loneliness, dejection, fear, and uncertainty. A greater awareness of the poor, the oppressed, and the marginalized is highlighted in the annual Lenten campaign, which was started in 1981. With the Aggiornamento came the birth of various new ministries and apostolates within the Church. The dioceses adopted the new rite of Christian initiation for adults, or RCIA. The new adult catechesis was introduced in 1990 for providing systematic education in the faith. The new Catechism of the Catholic Church, described as the most important document since Vatican II, was officially launched in 1994 in the 3 dioceses of West Malaysia. In the same light, the science of catechetics was given due emphasis, and the various dioceses continue to lend serious efforts to promote and upgrade the imparting of various programs to the faithful. To bring about awareness and to activate in single adults a positive response to the ongoing mission of the Church, an effective program called Choice was adopted by all the dioceses in Malaysia. The Worldwide Catholic Marriage Encounter was another program that was introduced to cater to the spiritual upliftment, affirmation, and towards inspiring joy and fulfillment to married couples. The Campus Ministry Office was established nearly 10 years ago to minister to the spiritual needs of Catholic students in the many local universities and tertiary level colleges in the country.
Evangelization went on high gear with the setting up of the Kuala Lumpur School of Evangelization, or CLASE, in 1992. This was in response to the Holy Father's call to uphold the decade of evangelization. The Church also continues to lend a ear to another very important group of people, the youths, who will lead the Pilgrim Church in its onward journey towards and beyond the nation's milestone of Vision 2020. Effective and progressive youth programs continue to be initiated in the 3 dioceses, and many more are waiting to be implemented. These programs and established youth bodies will seek to serve the needs of youth and single adults and act as a liaison with Christian bodies and youth organizations. To keep the faithful regularly informed of the happenings in and around the Church, an effective publication was required. A Catholic fortnightly called Herald was launched in 1994. As such was the tremendous changes that overtook the Church in Malaysia since the historic day of the Aggiornamento right up to this moment. But how is this gathering in Plentong, Johor, different from all the earlier assemblies? That's the point in question. What can a mere 400 achieve in just 4 days?
These are valid questions that can be answered well only if it is understood that the present gathering here is part of a long ongoing process initiated in 1976, reviewed in 1986, received in 1993, and culminating in 1996. In the middle of 1993, the Church began to look into the remote preparations for the 1996 Assembly, which marks the 20 years since the Aggiornamento. What was to be realized is to know where we are as Church, so as to gravitate into the future as one people of God. Through the various assemblies, review sessions, dialogues, and discussions, there were clear signs that we need to listen to one another to find out where we are as the people of God. There was a need to discern in the light of the dramatic changes in our nation as to which direction we should take. Hence, the need for a shared common vision, as our communion has to be rooted in the unity of vision and mission. This ideal clearly advocates that the Church in Malaysia must regard the key events in our history and lives as part of the universal Church.
Looking back, the past 20 years since many positive changes and achievements are indeed apparent, but there is always plenty to do in the vineyard of the Lord. The hope of the Malaysian Church in Jesus Christ and confidence in Mary and the saints has sustained the soldiers of faith as of fortune among its people. Jesus has confirmed with his parables the essential message he had stated in direct words, the abundance of life that he has come to bring to persons, to society, and to the whole world. The promise of Jesus will continue to become a reality with the infallible firmness of his word and presence. As the fields of Galilee once rejoiced with a great harvest of plenty, let us too continue in our journey onwards, becoming powerful springboards that will bear witness with renewed vigor to the good news, sailing the Jubilee year of the new millennium and beyond.
First, what is this consumerism, materialism? I mean, is it the same thing or is it different? And then why we should be interested in this? And what promotes consumerism or materialism? And what do we do about it? First of all, you don't have to believe everything I say. But whatever I share with you this evening is something which I have personally experienced in many countries in the region. So if it does not come to this part, it will come. That I can assure you. I begin by saying that to consume is not bad, because if you don't consume, you die. So whether you want to build a house, whether you want to wear clothes, whether you want to eat, it's perfectly good and necessary. Because all of us are consumers. Some consume more, others consume less. Those with big stomachs consume more of certain kinds of food. So don't think that this is a bad word, consume. Or material things, they are not bad. That is not what consumerism and materialism is all about. You need a refrigerator, a car, maybe a bicycle, a washing machine. These are good things. In fact, I think the washing machine is one of the best gifts anybody could have received in this world. Imagine spending half the day washing clothes.